Hello everyone and welcome to another episode with MTG Josh. Today is a bit of a unique episode. So I have an old friend who's trying to get into Arena, and essentially he asked me what would be the best way to get into the standard format and how to kind of build a new deck on kind of a budget without having to grind too much and without having to drop loads of money into the game, which is a great question basically. So today I thought I'd just go through a little bit of deck building just to see if I could give anyone a helping hand and to kind of inform people on how to build a deck, not just standard, it could be historic, it could be Brawl as well. And then we can just go through a simple standard deck creation. So you want to go into the editor, and then if you click on the symbol here, you can select which format you want to build, and this way it basically shows you the cards you can and cannot use. There's a lot of formats now compared to when I first started on here, but there's not as many as in actual paper Magic, but yeah, there's still quite a lot. So you go here and you select standard. So my friend wanted to know how to build a blue and black deck starting from scratch essentially. So when you start the game you will be getting sort of like some starter packs and a few cards here and there, but you won't have too much. So let's see if I've got many cards. So what I would do, because my friend wanted to build a blue and black deck, I would select the blue and black symbols at the top of the interface. What this does is it tells you all the cards in these colours that you own. So it's a great way to filter down what you have. You can also select the colour symbol, and that will also choose artifacts, so artifacts can go into any deck. If you want to see cards you don't have, you press this symbol here, and then you toggle the Not Collected button. This is handy if you want to see the cards that also aren't in your collection. Because I do play quite a lot of Arena, most of the cards are unlocked. If there is a card you don't have, it will be greyed out. So if you just go back there to this Zephyr Gull, for instance, you can right click it and then craft it, and that uses one wild card. Wild cards are earned by opening boosters. So this is an uncommon because it's silver, and it will take one crafting to unlock this card, so then I'll go down to 178. You can select how many you want to craft. So you can make a playset and that will cost 4. Obviously rarer cards will cost rares, and then mythics will cost mythics, and if you hover over this, this will tell you how many of each rarity you have. So this is really useful when you want to know how many decks, cards in a deck you'll need. So one thing I like to do when I build decks in any format is I like to filter the cards that I own by the rare and the mythic slot. So I'll take off the Not Collected for now. So why would I do this? So let's have a look why. What this tells me is how many of the strongest cards in the game I own, because to be honest, the rares and the mythics are normally the strongest cards in the format. So then what you do, you just have a look at the cards you have, and then you try to see playsets of cards. Essentially, you want to have 4 of a card to make it effective in your deck. The reason you want to have 4 in your deck is because the more cards you have, the higher chance you will see the card in your deck. If you have a strategy, let's say you want a flying tribal deck, and you want to put in really powerful flying cards like Brazen Borrower, which is a fantastic card by the way. If you only had 1 Brazen Borrower in your deck, you're only going to see this 1/60th of the time. But if you then have 4 of them, you are quadrupling the chance of you seeing this card in your starting hand. So obviously your odds are higher. So yeah, you want to have, you essentially do want to get play sets of the best cards you own. So the cool thing is, let's start building now. Let's say I want to put 4 Brazen Borrowers into a deck. The land editor will autofill your deck, nowadays anyway, with the lands that will complement the cards you've chosen. So it's gone for 24 islands in this case. The reason it's gone for 24 is because 24 lands is a great average starting point for building a 60 card deck. And then what I'll do is yeah, try to fill out the rest of the deck with other cards that I think will complement flying. So there's a few ways to do this. You could just look through the cards that you own that have flying, for instance, and then you could put those into the deck. So you've got Master of Winds, for instance. This is just an example. So you put a few of those in. Let's say you want to put in the Fairy Formation. And what else could we do? We could put in Soulblade Djinn, Thrix. So the more cards you add to the deck, the more you're going to see it's called the curve. So if you click on this button here and you look on the left, this is the graph that displays your mana curve. So the higher the bar, the more cards you have in that mana cost. So the ideal mana curve will look like an upside down pyramid. And in standard, which is an aggressive 60 card format, you want to peak at around 2.5. So for example, I'm just going to fill the deck with cards, just any cards really at this point, just to show you the ideal curve. Doesn't really matter what the cards are at this point. Can be anything, just to show you guys. And then we can filter by mana cost, which is a great way to find the cards you need that fill the gaps in your curve. So 1-drops are really good in standard and historic, because the more of these you can play out early, the more aggressive you can be, depending on the style of deck you have. And then we can go for 2-drops now, just to see. So when you're building, just don't worry about anything for now. Just basically put in all your favourite cards. Doesn't even matter what they are and how many of them you have. Just try to find strategies that kind of link together. So in this case, I've made a blue and black deck, and as you can see, there's 74 cards. So in standard, historic, any format, you never want to go above 60, because the more cards you have in the deck, the less chance you have of finding the key strategy pieces in your deck that will eventually win you the game. So in this case, I would now try to get rid of 14 cards. So because of how aggressive standard can be in the higher ranks, I would tone down the higher CMC cards. And the reason for that is, high CMC cards are harder to cast. And that's simply because of the fact that every turn you're trying to draw one land, and you can only play one land a turn. So in order to maximize your plays, it's much better to have lower cost cards. If you have too many high cost cards, first of all, your starting hand could be filled with them, and therefore you'll never be able to cast them. And secondly, you can't play more than one spell a turn. And there's a concept in Magic which I call the critical mass, is when you can start to play 2 or more spells per turn. At this point, you're starting to overwhelm your opponent, and then you can take them down a lot easier. So yeah, for the sake of argument, let's take out some more of these, and then take out a couple of these. Yeah. So this is actually a very aggressive curve, because not quite an upside down pyramid, if you can imagine. So if you look at the graph here, 16 2-drops, it's perfect. The 1 and 2 mana cards are kind of what establishes your board presence in a game. So let's say you made this deck. Yeah, again, don't worry about what the cards actually are, just think about the cost. You want to have a low curve. Just use whatever you have, essentially, that you think synergizes together. So once you sort this out, we'll take a look at the land drops. So the deck editor suggests you have 10 blue sources and 22 black sources. Yeah, which seems fine to me. But in this case, I would then go into my lands section to see what lands I have that match the colours of your deck. Normally these will be rare and mythic. So we'll look at the rares. They tend to be rares, the dual lands. So they're called dual lands because they tap for one of each colour. So now you want to find any semblance of dual lands you have. So for instance, I'm going to put in 4 Temples of Deceit, not only because they tap for blue and black, They also scry one when they come in. So these were a great card when Standard was around. With these cards, obviously these are going to rotate soon. As I said, these are from Theros, so they will rotate in September. But yeah, they tap for blue and black. If you're looking for the new version of this card, then yeah, I would just look at the filter, and then you can see what sets are actually in Standard here. So the top 4 are the most recent, so you're safe to unlock cards from these sets, and the bottom 4 are the ones going to rotate soonest. So if you're looking for the new dual lands to replace the temples when these rotate, I would recommend things like the Pathway cards from Kaldheim. Or sorry, they're from Zendikar Rising as well. So put these in. And the nice thing about these cards is when you put a new land in, it refreshes the land base, so then you have fewer basic lands. And yeah, this is basically what you need in a dual colour deck. The issue with having too many monocoloured lands is you can really struggle casting cards that, let's say, were blue and black in their cost. So yeah, that's just an example of how to build a good land base. You want to have not too many dual lands, because if you have too many lands that come and tap, that's really going to slow you down. But I'd say yeah, something like 8 dual lands is good in a deck like this. And in this case, these are rares. However, there are plenty of uncommon options for dual lands as well, which is nice. So yeah, if you're on a budget, you can go for, let's just change the filter on this, uncommon land. Well, actually, I think it's even better than that. I think they're commons. Yep, so that's even better for the budget players. We've got Dismal Backwater, which has been reprinted in a Ikoria as well. So these come in you gain a life, which is quite nice. Yeah, I'll definitely pop these into your deck. And the nice thing about the colour pairs is every colour pair has the lands to support dual lands. So I'm showing blue-black here, but whatever your favourite colour deck is, white, blue, green, red, whatever, yeah. They normally printed in a symmetrical way in which everybody gets a dual land that they can put in at a budget level. So that's really good. So as you can see, I've put these lands in, and it still remains at 60 because the computer has removed the basics. So yeah, that's a bit of a basic outline on how to begin making decks in Standard. As I said, don't worry about the rarity I'm using, this just informs your decision. If you have a favourite rare you like, I would definitely try and build around that. That's a great way to formulate a strategy. So for instance, let's look at this other creature. So this says Hooded Blightfang. Whenever a creature you control Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So in this kind of deck, you'd want to find Death Touch creatures. So the best way to do that would be to type Death Touch in. This way you could find all the Death Touch creatures in the colours of your choice that would then synergize with the Hooded Blightfang. So yeah, in short, find the rares and mythics that you really like, look at what the cards do, and then find other cards that synergize with those cards. Try to find a curve that looks like an inverted pyramid, and yeah, you should have great success in building your deck. And if you wanted to use a filter of the cards you control, then you can press this arrow up and then let's say type flying in there. The game will then separate all the cards in your deck with that keyword ability or any word you choose. So this is really cool. This didn't always used to exist when I started playing Arena. And yeah, it's a great way to filter. And yeah, so my style of gameplay is heavy synergy. So I like to use cards that gel together really well. That's not the only way to play. There's many ways to play, like Combo for instance. Combo has a very different way of playing. Combo decks don't really have much of an aggressive start. Combo tends to slow you down at the beginning by destroying your resources or preventing damage or drawing cards, and then their curve might be really expensive spells at 5, 6, 7, 8. But unless you're a green deck or a deck which has a lot of ways to put more lands onto the battlefield or ramp, you don't want to risk that starting out the game. Yeah. So if you're just starting out, I really recommend just going with this strategy that I've told you here. Just go for a creature heavy deck and try to win by smashing. So I'd say creatures in the deck, you're probably going to want at least 20 creatures, just because you need ways to kill your opponent. Don't get too enamored with the fancy spells that cost a lot of mana. And yeah, you should be in for a few victories. Just give it a go and see what you think. Okay, so the next subject I wanted to talk about was similar, but for the Brawl format. So Brawl has two flavours nowadays. You've got the regular 60 card Brawl, which is standard legal cards. And then you've also got Historic Brawl, which is all the cards in the game basically, but soon to be 100 cards. So what I've done is I've actually saved a template for use when making a Brawl deck. So this is useful for a number of reasons. This includes basically colourless cards that you can use in any deck, and that's how this template works quite well. So let's go and see what I've put in here. So yeah, it's really handy to just have something like this when you're starting out, because it saves you a lot of time and it allows you to build around key cards in your deck. So what you could do is filter by the colourless cards in your deck. So we could say artifacts. That's a really great place to start. And then colourless artifacts. So yeah, the reason for this is you can put these into any deck. And the reason this is important is because every deck needs ways to ramp or do things that your colours can't normally handle. So artifacts are like a nice way to add things into your deck that your normal deck can't do. So let's say you're a mono red deck and you want to destroy a creature outright. You could look at, let's say, what have we got here? So yeah, my classic answer for red, for instance, would be something like Ugin, which exiles each permanent with mana cost X or less that's one or more colours. So this does something that red can't do, and colourless is a great way to make up for those flaws. So let's just take a look at this template. So this is just for standard, but you could use these cards in Historic Brawl as well, they're still legal. So my template was basically Shadow Spear, which gives you +1/+1 trample and lifelink on creatures, equip cost of 2. So this is a fantastic way for any colour apart from white and black to gain life, which is something you shouldn't underestimate. Gaining life means you can last longer in games. Stonecore Serpent, which is such a pushed colourless card. X cost, reach, trample, protection from multicoloured. So many words. That's a lot of words on a rare, take my word for it. Great in every format it's in. Enters with X counters, so this card is great early on and great later. So you can't really go wrong. Cards that have X in their cost are fantastic multi-format all-stars because of the fact they can scale. So always keep that in your mind. When placing this on a curve, Arena always puts this at the bottom. And that's, yeah, it's probably the best place to put them. But realistically, you could play this at any turn in the game, and the longer the game goes on, the better cards like this are. But yeah, it's just a great little format staple I would recommend putting into your deck. Format All-Star, Arcane Signet. Every Brawl or Historic Brawl deck needs this card. If you don't play this card, then you're probably using green, which has a lot of ways to ramp as well. But yeah, if you're not using Arcane Signet, then yeah, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot, essentially. Maze Mind Tome, 2 mana artifact. Tap it to put a counter on it to scry 1, or pay 2, put a counter on it to draw a card. When there are 4 counters on it, sacrifice it. Oh, sorry, exile it and you gain 4 life. So this is just card advantage. Goes in any deck. Really good. Never underestimate the scry. It's great if you're in a pickle and you need to get the land on top. Tome of Legends. Similar style card. Comes with a counter. Whenever a commander enters the battlefield, put a page counter on it. With low cost commanders, this is fantastic. You play the commander, get a counter. Attacks, you get a counter. It's incredible value. I use this in real life in Paper Commander. And yeah, it's just a fantastic way to push out, just pump out more card advantage. Highly recommend it. Definitely use these 3 if you can, for now anyway. Obviously these will rotate if you're playing regular Brawl, but Historic Brawl, which is like my favourite format, you can always use these. So there's always a place to use these cards. When I made this template, Altar of the Pantheon was quite good because it gives you devotion to each colour, and each combination of colours is increased one. So if you had any god decks that needed devotion to make them online, this gives you +1. So for instance, yeah, I might as well just show you. Let's go for Thassa. Yeah, so Thassa says, as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, it isn't a creature. So devotion is counted by the number of colourful pips on the top of the card. So as you can see, there's 1 blue pip, so that's 1 devotion. So Altar of the Pantheon gives you +1 pip, which means you're already 3 off from making Thassa into a creature able to attack. So yeah, that's just an example of that. If you want to know other good generic ramp, you can just go add, and then hit the colourless, and then let's see what other ways there are to ramp. So you've got dungeon map. I would add this to the template because it adds colours and pay 3 to venture into the dungeon, which is just more fun to show you. I'll add that now. Letter of Acceptance. Add 1 mana of any colour, sack it to draw a card. That's really good. Palladium Mirror, which is a 3 mana 2/2, but it also taps to give you 2 colours. Yeah, I'll put that in template. Doesn't matter if you don't use it. It's just there to inform your choice. Replicating Ring is great as well. Pardon me, add 1 mana of any colour. Beginning of your upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. Then it has 8 or more counters on it. Remove all of them and create 8 of these cards, which is just bonkers. And then Skyclave Relic, Indestructible. Kick a 3 when it enters battlefield. If it was kicked, create 2 tapped tokens at copy sets. You can pay 6 to get 3 mana rocks, which is great. So your mana rock is a term used to describe a card that taps for mana. Rock is just really old terminology. I think one of the first cards that ever came out was a rock of some kind, and it gave you mana, so that's what they're called, mana rocks. And then you get into like the fancy mana makers like Nyx Lotus, which adds mana equal to the devotion of the colour of your choice, and then you get to more expensive stuff. But I think anything past the 3 mana range is a bit too slow, so I would stick with the 3 mana range or less for your ramp. And then another classic card is Solemn Simulacrum. Comes in. Now the difference between this and ramp is this searches your deck for a land and puts it into play, which means that it's essentially better than a mana rock because a land is much harder to kill than an artifact. So just bear that in mind. So this is 4 mana, but it gives you a 2/2 creature, a land, and also when it dies you draw a card. It literally does everything. And yeah, fantastic card. And then just to round off the colourless package, you would go for something like Ugin. You've got all sorts now. You've got the other Ugin as well. From, let's see. Okay, yeah, because it's a standard, it only has the standard legality stuff. But yeah, there is another Ugin for 6 mana, which you might have seen in my previous videos, where it can destroy permanents for its minus ability, which is really good. But yeah, this is just for the standard choices. So I'd definitely think about putting these cards into your deck if you're just starting out making a Brawl deck. So yeah, if you don't know what Brawl is, it's a 60 card format like standard, but it's a singleton format, so you only have 1 of each copy of card. It's the closest you'll get in standard legality anyway to the Commander format, which is really popular in real life. But that's why I play Historic Brawl now, because that's 100 card format, and you can use a lot older cards, which is what I like. It's more nostalgic as well. But yeah, I like both formats. So Brawl, 60 card standard, Historic Brawl, soon to be 100 card format with cards going back as far as you can on Arena. So it's great to use your cards. And then to round out the templating for any Brawl, Command Tower. I mean, what more can I say? This is the best land in the format. If it's not in your 2 colour decks, then yeah, definitely put it in. Probably don't need to put this in monocolour, as you can see why. It adds 1 mana of any colour on your colour identity. You can put it in because the art's cool, but it's probably worse than a basic because there's some more synergy with basics normally. Like Solemn can't fetch it, for instance. Evolving Wilds. This is the inverse of Command Tower. If you're using monocolour, probably don't use this because it's just too slow. But in using anything with 2 or more colours in it, go for Evolving Wilds. This logic applies to any format, not just Brawl, if you're playing standard as well. Fabled Passage is basically the rare version of Evolving Wilds, but it comes in untapped if you control 4 or more other lands. Sorry, 4 or more lands. Fantastic. This is a multi-format all-star as well, used in every format you can imagine. Basically, yeah, great card. And then Field of Ruin. So there's a lot of pesky lands in the format that do annoying things. Field of Ruin destroys it. as long as it's non-basic, and then each player searches the library for a basic land card, puts on the battlefield, then shuffles. So yeah, so that's the template to using Brawl or Historic Brawl. But for now, hope that helps anyone who had any basic questions on either Standard or Brawl. If anyone has any more suggestions on what kind of tutorial videos you'd like me to make, then yeah, drop a message in the comments, and yeah, I'll see what I can do. Hopefully you can leave me a like, and yeah, please, if you could subscribe to this channel and show your support, that'd be fantastic. And I'm happy to make any videos that may help people get into the game in the future. But yeah, until next time, have a great day, and see you guys later. Bye.